You brought up the tweet that Locodoco had about the preparation that TSM had done and maybe not expecting this opponent. How much of it was mispreparation, maybe, by TSM? I'm leaving that in the middle. And how much was it Joey Flash Wolves just coming up with an entirely new plan out of, well, thin air, basically?
I don't really know if we can equate percentages, but it is interesting to see. You know, the Irelia pick came out. There's been so much talk about when we were going to see it, who was going to run it, etc., etc. And Snake had an okay game after the lane swap shenanigans had ended. I think TSM did a decent-ish job in theory, but their execution was bad. We had misplays, death sentences didn't land. We didn't see Santorin landing sonic waves in the early game. It felt like, first of all, TSM were a little caught off guard. It then felt like Flash Wolves mid-game was decent, and also TSM underperformed. We did not see them playing the champions to the expectation that they set yesterday.
Yeah. I think going into the tournament, we felt like TSM's NALCS performances really showed a lack of control in terms of the objective games in both Towers and the Dragons. And Yoey Flash was in their first games, didn't really show much of that, but in these last two games versus SK and TSM, they've shown a clear-cut plan in terms of focusing those early tower, going for the four-man pushes, and then transitioning to that into an early Dragon, and then eventually snowballing a really strong fourth Dragon potential from the get-go, which gives you a really early, almost a win condition by the time you get that fifth Dragon. And then I think that the deciding factor for TSM was a really underwhelming performance by Santorin. He had a lot of misplays and just wasn't on the map as much as he should have. You know, you have a lot of setup with the Maokai and the Lissandra and the Thresh, and none of that was really done. And the one time that they could have really punished Stake, traded a 1-for-1, and now all of a sudden the entire early game that was devoted to shutting down Stake is gone.
And yeah, it actually took me back to pick some bench just before you go, because we had the Maokai first pick coming in of TSM when they could have gone for the Nidalee, and I feel like the Joey Flash Wolves had it somewhat prepared and knew that they were going to go for that Maokai because we've put so much emphasis on it and how good Stake was on it, and then they could have the Nidalee. Santorin had to go for Lee and just couldn't make anything happen. Was it just a champion?
Of course. Well, I mean, the thing is when you take the Irelia is somewhat like Maokai, but harder to execute in the sense that it's a point-and-click 2-second stun. So a champion like Lissandra has to be very careful going into that, just because, you know, Irelia is going to be usually a little bit chunked, taking a little bit of the Corky poke going into it. And Bjergsen's job is made that much harder because now, unlike a Maokai scenario, the Irelia stun, you're going to die in 2 seconds. No Crucible from Lustboy, and Bjergsen's job of trying to 1v5 is just becomes that much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it seemed to me too like TSM just was kind of so thrown off their game by kind of the weirdness of the first 10 minutes that they just seemed out of sync for the rest of it. We saw Dyrus getting caught over and over and over again in the last half of that game. So just a very kind of bizarre performance from TSM, especially after the last game we saw them play against CJ.
Yeah, and in the team fights that they get, they also had a problem with the focus and in the targets. We have a specific fight that we want to replay for you guys in which NL ends up getting a triple kill because he was left, well, basically untouched. We'll get that replay on in just a second. And again, I say it's NL that did good, but you say it's Sword Art. It's Sword Art all the way with the Sami.
Going into this team fight, it's a mid-game team fight. TSM has a good power spike with the Righteous Glory. Lissandra, really strong right now, trying to capitalize on the bad pounds by the Nidalee. Immediately goes in. She's forced to flash, now being her ultimate projectile. This bubble right here saves the fight because now they cannot instantly kill the Nidalee. Nidalee gets the pounds, forcing Santorin to commit deeply for the kick on the Nidalee. Now they've used all their cooldowns on the Nidalee and the Irelia, and you have Lucian just hitting the back lane completely for free, and Zed, none of the crowd control has been used on him, so he can easily go in, drop the shadow, keep slowing TSM, and you see those shurikens and E-slows really helping out on facilitating Lucian's job to clean up. And, you know, it was a great bubble by Sword Art, and it felt like TSM kind of baited themselves, and that's kind of how the team comp that Yoey Flash Wolves has, how it works. They kind of bait the team to go into you.
Another bubble right at the end there, just as Bjergsen came out of the hourglass. But I do also think we need to give some praise to Stake. He had a very difficult early game. After that lane swap, Deficio actually highlighted how the lane was not pushing in Stake's favor. So Dyrus got some early, free, safe farm in the opening 10 minutes. There was multiple repeated ganks onto Stake's lane. And yes, he had a delayed power spike, but once he hit it, he did relatively well. End of the game, 3-6 and 14. And for a guy who's had a very shaky performance yesterday, we question, can he only play Maokai the Irelia was the answer. And I think it was a good performance. For him in particular, he's definitely going to draw confidence from this win. In that team fight as well, jumped straight onto Wild Turtle, was pulling some aggro and allowing his backline to stay safe.
Also, good decision by him or bad decision by TSM, the fact that he was able to get the farm because the waves kept being pushed in his favor. He just sat back a little and he had the bigger engages and flanks in those team fights as well. So looking ahead, NL, never lose or never give me Lucian. I don't know if it's just a champion or if that's something they're going to have to look at for the next game, turning sides. Maybe Santorin has to get on something. He has to get his hands on Rek'Sai, I think, or Nidalee.
I don't know. I mean, even on the Nidalee games we've seen has been a little lackluster. Perhaps something more, a little bit more supportish, like a new. No. But
doubt that.
Just the fact that, for instance, we give a lot of credit to Stake, and he did play those very well. But I felt like Santorin and Lustboy, the synergy between themselves just wasn't there, and really punishing Stake. You know, when you get your second CS at 10 minutes. That should be a win condition in itself for TSM.
Yeah, and you know, you can't deny the fact TSM did misplay and did underperform. You know, they were missing skill shots, they weren't on the same page, and they made some questionable calls. But I do think a lot of the praise for the flash rolls in the mid game has to be put on their shoulders. They were forcing TSM's hand. They kept TSM on the back foot, kept them defending, and as long as the flash rolls kept playing aggressively, TSM made mistakes because they were forced to.
Yep. TSM has to go back to the drawing board for this one, so we're going to take a short break. In that break, you can check out the Score Esports app as they have a recap up for WE versus CJ Entus as well, so you want to refresh your memory on that one. But for us, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with Game 2 in just a minute.